Hello, Doc here. Today what I'm going to do is a walkthrough of how you go from, okay, I know how to connect to a database, I know how to pull data down from the database, to how do I create a website that is based upon dynamic content that comes from that database. And my recommendation would be that you don't try to follow me step by step, but rather to sort of step back and get the big picture of what I'm trying to do here, because what you're going to be doing is going to be different. The concepts are going to be the same. The steps may be very different. So I don't want you to try and replicate what I've done here, but rather to get the idea about what I did and why. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at, here is a page that I have produced from the sample database that is in the PHP group of software. So this database was set up for a motorcycle site, and what I've done is I've co-opted that and adapted it to what I need. So what I've got here is, it's a pretty basic site actually, and what it's built up on is these are repeating regions where the data is pulled from the database and presented in the page. Now, one of the things that you will notice is that there are images in here, and in that database there is no place for images. So that's the first thing that I'm going to talk about, is how do I work with those images here. And the general rule, and general rules are meant to be broken, but putting images in a database tends to make a database very large, and it tends to slow it down. So the general rule of thumb is to not put the images in the database themselves, but rather to put them somewhere on a line and call them from the URL. You put the URL into the database, and then you use that to put the images in your content. And that's what I did. So I'm going to bring up Dreamweaver here. And the first thing that I did is I went through here and I named, created a series of identically sized images, and I just named them G1 through G10. And so I put those in an images folder in my website. And so what that allows me to do is I need to capture the URL. So if I chose to view the image, then I've got this URL. That's an absolute URL, and that allows me to enter that information into the database in order that I can pull it up, and I'll show you why I do that later. So you need to have that URL in order to apply it to each of these images in the database. So let's go back and take this from the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of replicate what I've done, or at least I'm going to show you what I've done as I replicate it. So I'm going to do a new PHP document, and I'm going to go ahead and give that a name. And I'm going to save that. So we start with just the basic information. Okay, and so the next thing that I want to do, I've got my PHP document, I've got it saved. Now the next thing that I need to do is, obviously, I need to set up my database connection. So I'm going to bring my database set of tools into play. And I've already got this THARP set up. So you know how to do this by now, and you can see in here the tables that are available in there. You'll use the database connection, or the database that you've been given. So I can see that I've got the tables for customers that we've worked with before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the one that I'm going to be working with here is called products. And what this is going to allow me to do is I'm going to co-opt this from what was a motorcycle database, because we're not going to go into designing databases, but rather we're going to co-opt this one that's here. What this allows me to do is to kind of steal the information from this site. So I've got my database set up. I'm going to go ahead and set up a binding for that. and I'm going to do a record set, and I'll call it live content demo. And I want to set, in this case I'm setting it to products because that's the table that I want to use, and I want it to pull all of those. So what I want to do is I want to do a test. And when you look at your test, you're going to see that there's a lot more records than that. I've gone through, and one of the things that I did is I set up a delete, add, update grid that allowed me to go through and change some of those settings. Now there is another way, and I'll go ahead and close this out and finish my binding. Now if I wanted to see what's in that record set, I've got my access here. But the other thing that I could do if I wanted to is I could create a dynamic table on this page that will let me see what kind of content is in here. And you already know how to do that. So if you want to create either this, put it in this page, or put it in a separate page that allows you to do like the update records, you're going to need to be able to update the records. I've already done that, and so I'm not going to show that on screen, but I will show you the page that I created and how that works. So what I've pulled up here is this is just the page that I set up to update the records. So if I go and look at that, and I just pulled that down as an update record, I used the wizard, the update record wizard, to pull that down. And if I pull up that document, what you're going to see is that I then have the ability to go in and edit those records that are in place. And this is what that page looks like. So what I did is went through and I changed the product name on the first one. I haven't done it on all the other ones. Like right here, you'll see this is still data from the old thing. But then I changed the product line, and where it used to have product vendor, this is the field that I co-opted in order to put my URL in. Now, one thing that I learned is that that's just a little bit, there's a maximum number of characters in that field, and so I actually had to shorten the name of my images to get them down, because I had garden1.jpg, and what that ended up doing is it would lose that last image. So you'll have to stick within the restrictions of it, but that's what I did. I went ahead and I co-opted this product vendor, and I put the URL in, and for each of these I put in a different URL that points to a different image. So you'll see the G1, now here's G2, and I did that for the first 10 records. Now the other thing that I did, now you can go in and use a delete record system, or I turned to phpMyAdmin in order to manage this. So I came into my database, and this is in phpMyAdmin, and you should have gotten the information. I went to the products, and then I came into the record set here, and what I chose to do is to browse. And what that lets me do is see the records in here. Now, I've already gone through and deleted all the records that I'm not going to use. I just left 10 of them in there so that I could do this for demonstration. But if I wanted to, what you can do is you can come in, you can select all of these, and then if you wanted to, you could choose the X to delete the ones that you wanted to get rid of. That's exactly what I did. Or you could use the delete records field to do that. Now, those of you that are using the SQL database, the number of records that you have in your database is massively huge. So you're going to have to decide how you want to manage that. I would just limit myself to the first however many records you need for your site, and make sure that those are the ones that show up when you're doing your website. So, but this is one way to do that. You can come into phpMyAdmin, add records, delete records, and that sort of thing. And that's what I did in order to get it down from, I don't know, I guess there was probably about 60 records, and I got that down to just the 10 that I'm actually using. And you'll see that the content in there, this image displays a butterfly in a garden corresponds to the information that is in this record. So when I go back to this document, you'll see that the information corresponds to what is in the database that you can see through those other two means. And so what this update record allows you to do is to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that live just so that you can get an idea. I'm going to change that second element, and let me see, what is my second element? That's got sort of a, we'll just call it water feature. So the product line will change to stuff in the garden. And I'm just sort of making this up as I go because I am co-opting theirs. I don't use the product scale in mine. I've already got the image in there, so I don't want turnable front wheels. So let's say, what is a garden without a water feature? And then I'm not going to change those other things, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update the record. Now when I come back into this document, I just changed this record, so I'm going to reload this record, and you'll see that the product line has been changed to stuff in the garden, the water feature, and the description. So that has allowed me to update this web page by changing the content in the database. So that is sort of the goal of what we're trying to do here. The greater goal is to be able to take control of this database, put the content that we want in there, and then display that content in the way that we want to display it. So I'm back to that's the update page, and you guys know how to do that, so I'm not going to walk you through that. So now we've got to make sure in this document we've already set up the database, we've set up the bindings. Now let's put in some sample information that will allow us to go forward. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull information from the areas that are going to be showing up here. So I'm just going to put text in here, product code, and then product name. And I'm taking these straight from the names that are in the table here. Product line, I don't use product scale. For product vendor, that's actually the that's where the image is going to be. So I'm just going to put a image URL there for now so that I know where to put that. And then product description. And that's all of the ones that we use. I'm going to go ahead and put a colon at the end of each of those. Not that it's necessary, just how I like to do it. So we've now got this location for information in here. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to go into, I've selected all the content that's inside that main section. What I'm going to go is I'm going to go into the insert, and then I'm going to choose the repeat region. And what the repeat region will do is it will allow this information to repeat over and over again, so that for instance in here, all of this is the information that's within the repeat region, and what it will do is it will cycle through the records in the database and keep repeating that over and over. And that's how you get it to display the multiple things. So I'm going to go ahead and set that as a repeat region, and then it's going to ask me where I want to pull my content from. So I'm using that record set, and I'm going to just choose to show 5. Now in the website I did earlier, I chose to show 10 records. I'm going to choose to show only 5 records at a time here. So it wrapped the PHP code around that. Now the other thing that I don't have on that other page that I need is that I want to have a record set paging that'll allow me to go through. I've got 10 records. I'm only putting 5 on a page now. So I'm going to put this navigation in there so that it'll allow me to scroll through the different pages of my content. So like if I had a seed catalog, I could scroll through all the different seeds and products that I have available in there. So now we have a repeat region, but it's not going to be showing me any information at this point. So what I need to do is I need to start adding information to that. And the way that I do that is I'm going to insert, and I'm going to this dynamic data, and I'm going to choose dynamic text. And what that does is it brings up the dynamic text dialog box. And what I do is I choose, and I had, you'll notice my cursor is after product code. So I'm just going to click product code, and I'm going to click OK. And you notice that it puts the PHP code in there for that element. Now I'm going to come through down, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the, again, I'm going to choose a dynamic text. I've got product name here. And I'm going to make my way through that with all of them. Now with the image URL, as you recall, I've taken over the product vendor element of this database. If I was doing this as a permanent solution, I would go in to the database itself using phpMyAdmin, and I would change the name of this to URL. But for demonstration purposes, it's going to be fine. And you'll notice I put that in the wrong place, so I'm going to move that down. And it really is that easy to use it. And then I'm going to go into product description, and one last time I'm going to insert dynamic data, and I'm going to choose product description. So what that allows me to do is to now, I'm going to use the live view. And so that will synchronize everything up, and it will let me see what's going to be coming on in here. Now you'll notice that it has the repeating regions. There's no formatting to it at all, so it's not ready for prime time yet. But it does have this next and last, which will bring us to, and it won't work in here. I'd have to look at it in a browser. So if I go to this browser and open this up, it's going to implement that paging so that it'll bring the first 5 records on this page because I had set that value to 5 pages. Bring this up, and there is the information. And so the repeating region, you can tell where it repeats by that product code is the first line, and it is going through and it's repeating that. So now what we need to do, there's a couple things. One is that for this, let's go back to this. We want to use an image in there. Well, I've got the URL of that image, but I don't have an actual image showing up. So what I've got to do is just simply, I'm going to choose to insert an image. Okay, so right now I've got a paragraph here that has the image URL information. So what I'm going to come in, img source equals, and I'm not going to give it a source right now, and I'm going to go ahead and close that. So what I'm going to do now is in that quotation marks, what that's looking for is the URL. So I'm going to grab this code from the opening less than question mark PHP to the question mark greater than side, and I'm going to drag that inside those quotes where I would normally have my URL. And I'm going to get rid of this image URL text here that was just being a placeholder. And so what that allows me to do when I refresh this, it then goes out, and instead of pulling it pulls the information from the database, but where it's inserting it is instead of it's inserting that as text, it's inserting the value of that image into the source for that image. So it becomes part of the code rather than part of the text, and that allows that image to appear. And so now the next thing to do is to just start formatting this. And this is no different than what you would do to format the presentation of any other document. Let's go ahead and once more, let's save this and go look at it in Firefox just so that you can see what it's doing now. And I've got my different sections. It's a lot easier to tell where one ends and the next begins now because I've added the imagery to it. And when I get to the fifth one, I've got the ability to go to the next and see the next set of information within the same page. And really, that's all that there is to the database side of this, making that dynamic content available. So I'm going to pull up this document that I created a little while ago that we're using, that we're looking at when we're on this page right here. And that's called livecontent.php, just for me to know. And so I'm going to pull that document up, and when I come in here, what you're going to see is there's really not a lot of information here. I've set some divs in there, and I've given it a container div to contain it all, and I'm using the HTML5 code for a header and footer, so I've got the header in there, and I've put a background image to it. I've done all my styling within this document so that I'm not using an external style sheet, just to keep things simple in this particular case. But I've added background images and the padding and all the different CSS stuff that you are going to need to do whenever you're creating a web page. Another thing that I have done is I'm using a, if you notice, I've got the container here, but then on the body what I've done is I have added a linear gradient. And as you go down through that, you'll notice that it makes its way through the linear gradient, and I end up bringing up, I've got actually 4 different colors that are set into that linear gradient. I cheated on that. I didn't do it the hard way. I went out to a place that writes the code for that, and let me show you how I did that. So the way that I found that is I went out and I did a CSS3 gradient generator, and you're going to find that a lot of this stuff that you want to do, there's already tools out there that make it easier. So I actually chose this Ultimate CSS gradient generator from colorzilla.com, and when I go to that site, what it does is it gives you this set of sliders where you can come in and you can enter the color that you want. And I actually used 4 different gradients here. I used the dark green as the first color. I used this bright green as the second color. This pinkish color, which actually came out of one of the pictures that I was using, one of the zinnias. And then I went back to this dark green at the bottom. And what it does is it creates the code that you need, and then all you have to do is choose copy and paste that into your document. And where I did it, since I was doing an internal style sheet, what I did is I applied that, and I'm scrolling through my code here because this PHP adds a lot of code to your site. What I'm looking for is the styles. Okay, and I find that here on my line 78, the styles start, there's the body, so that's what I'm applying that gradient to, and I just pasted all that information into that I had copied into the body, and that builds all the code for the different browsers so that when you come in, you can see how it works. It's got the different pieces of code that allow it to work in different browsers, but you can also see that it's got just different ways of coding using the same color codes for each of the browsers, and we've been through that previously. So all we got to do is just paste it in there, and then once it's pasted in there, you get this result. If you don't like the result, you can go back to the gradient and do it again. And the interesting thing about this gradient in this particular case, actually in any cases, that gradient is going to spread out over whatever available space is. So my page comes down here, so it does that gradient across the whole height of that. So you can do some pretty subtle things or some pretty obnoxious things like I've done here. I've never been accused of being the world's best developer of aesthetic websites. Structurally sound, aesthetically pleasing, not always. But that's my claim to fame. So that's how I did that. And let me think if there's anything else that needs to be done. I don't think so. I've added like I said, I've added the footer and the header, and there really isn't a lot of actual content in this page. The body only goes from here down to there, so it's really not that many pages of code. So quite a bit of styling and quite a bit of PHP in there, and that has allowed me to take control of the database, make it my own. And granted, at this moment, when you're looking at this, I've still got, this one shows up as a bus. It's got 30 windows, but I can go through there and I can update that so that I can say whatever I want. Now, the ideal thing is to design your own databases from the beginning, but we don't get into database design in this course, so we're just taking the ones that are out there and making them work for what we're doing. I hope that this has given you some vision into how you can use what we've learned using the different tools for connecting to our MySQL database and using the PHP to make the connection and change the content. The same principles apply in any dynamic content. So whether you're doing active server pages or PHP or any of the other ones that are out there, the principles are the same. You make the data connection, you establish the set of records that you're going to pull from, you determine how you're going to use those in the page. In this case, we're using a repeating region and then pulling individual pieces of content down into that repeating region, and then you go forward from there. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing what you're able to do with it. Thanks.